Xi Jinping arrived in Moscow for talks with Vladimir Putin. And yes, everyone knows that China now claims, if not total domination, then to share power with the United States on the world stage. But an ordinary person knows almost nothing about Xi himself. Who is he? How influential is he? Where did he even come from? And why politicians are afraid of him, not only in China, but all over the world. Be sure to watch this video to the end to understand what kind of person he is, and whether he is really as great as they say about him in communist propaganda. We're starting. The viewer may ask a reasonable question. Why did you decide at all that Xi deserves to be number one on the planet in terms of influence? Judge for yourself. Take the two largest economies in the world, the United States and China. Only in the States are the powers of the president strictly limited by other branches of government, the courts and so on. The US president alone cannot even declare war, because only Congress has this right. Xi Jinping is in a completely different role. He has no political opponents. He alone is able to decide the fate of China, relying only on his understanding of good and evil. The current General Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, is already 2012 years old. He also holds the post of Chairman of the People's Republic of China and Chairman of the Military Council. He represents virtually all the power in China. But this state has the largest army in the world and a rigid hierarchical system that currently works smoothly. This is the machine on top of which Xi sits, and this is what makes him the most influential person on earth. Journalists and experts keep coming to a similar view of things. In almost all ratings for influence in the top, it is Sim. It got to the point that in the 2016 year, the Communist Party of China officially awarded him the title of the main leader, whatever that means. But about everything in order, let's run through the biography of Xi. There are a lot of interesting things there. He was born on the 1st of June 1953 in Beijing. His father Xi Jinping was one of the party leaders of China and an associate of Mao Zedong. But not everything in the fate of the family went smoothly. The father was suspended and even arrested. He ended up in prison several times, but in the 80s, he still returned to big politics. Until the age of 9, the family lived well, but when the father was accused of an anti-party conspiracy, Xi Jinping's son also suffered and experienced repression. He was sent for labor re-education to the village, where he lived in a cave, where stacked bricks were his bed, and a bucket was his toilet. Already in adulthood, Xi Jinping recalled those terrible years. His constant companions were hunger, cold, and beatings of the guards. For almost 7 years, dirty bread with pigs has been my home. I slept under an old blanket that was infested with fleas. I drank with pigs from the same bucket. The head of the People's Republic of China told about that period of life. These hardships in a sense helped Xi Jinping in the distant future, when the people believed that the head of state knows perfectly well how a simple Chinese lives. A career in the Communist Party followed, and in the early 70s, Xi was allowed to return to the capital. It hardly makes sense to list all these positions in cities with unpronounceable Chinese names. Most importantly, in the 92nd year, she was already a delegate to the National Congress of the CPC. On November 14, 2012, the Central Committee of the Communist Party appointed Xi as General Secretary. Xi's reign was marked by a sharp tightening of the screws. He cleaned up all dissenters in the Communist Party apparatus, arrested and forced uncontrolled bloggers to publicly apologize, and created an eagle of power and invincibility around him. Moreover, in some moments, everyone really goes overboard. For example, a number of Chinese universities have already established faculties for studying Xi Jinping's thoughts. Usually, even the most authoritarian rulers do not reach this point, and their works begin to be studied after death. But Blue is like that. Many, of course, have heard about the Great Chinese Firewall. This is a censorship company, as a result of which, in the first 4 months alone, the activity of more than 100,000 internet users was restricted. In the 2021 year, a group of American scientists analyzed the results of accessing sites from inside and outside the Chinese segment of the internet, and comparing the results allowed us to assess how the Great Chinese Firewall manipulates search results. The researchers concluded that the system blocks about 311,000 domains. Of these, the blocking of 270,000 is carried out intentionally, and 41,000 rakes, in fact, for nothing, by mistake. Amazingly, about 40% of blocked sites are newly registered domains. They are blocked just in case, until Chinese regulators decide which category they belong to. Other investigators cited evidence of the involvement of the leader of the Chinese Communist Party in the repression of Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region of China, re-education camps, the prohibition of religious rights, and the mass relocation of hundreds of thousands of residents. Who knows what of this is true, because there is almost no information from this region of the Middle Kingdom. He is literally isolated from the outside world. One way or another, Many former prisoners reported years of torture and violence by the guards. And yes, of course, China has never been a democracy. But even despite the one-party political system, there was some semblance of competition and changeability of power there. Now, the vast majority of party positions are occupied by Xi's people. In general, not everyone in China is happy that the current Chinese leader is rewriting the traditions of governing the country the way he wants, and many are sharpening their grudge against him. Therefore, the protection of the General Secretary of the Communist Party of China is huge. Needless to say, even when she arrived in Moscow, half of the city was blocked and unprecedented security measures were taken. Traffic jams in some places have reached a maximum value of 10 points. She is so cruel that some kind of escalation is expected from China under his rule all the time. The head of the US Navy, for example, believes that China will soon attack Taiwan. And, given the ambitions of the Celestial Empire and its military capabilities, all this no longer seems nonsense. By the way, who do you personally consider the most influential person on Earth? Write in the comments. Perhaps, by the way, it will not even be a politician, but a representative of another sphere of society. She, smiling and so similar to Winnie the Pooh, is trying to create an image of a fatherly, benevolent politician, striving for a world settlement of issues. But his decision to remain in power further, contrary to Chinese traditions, makes it clear to everyone that she will do as he sees fit. When the Chinese boss was re-elected for a third 5-year term, which was, by the way, for the first time in the history of the People's Republic of China, deputies of the People's Congress unanimously voted for his candidacy. All 2,952 votes were cast for him. In addition to strengthening power within the country, the Chinese leader has launched a number of international initiatives aimed at expanding the global influence of the Celestial Empire. He initiated a large-scale Belt and Road project, promoted Beijing's expansion in the South China Sea, in Africa, and used China's economic levers to strengthen its influence on the UN. Thanks to the power of the country he leads, Xi's weighty word is always listened to. Beyond the borders of the Celestial Empire, experts are confident that, in the next 5 years of his rule, she will definitely not weaken his control over society and will continue to dominate China's political arena. And all this, of course, will allow him to remain the most influential person on the planet in the future.